There we go. And I believe we are live, but we'll wait a few seconds to make sure the stream is going well before I start and get some peeps into the room.
Nice.
Yep. It should be a lot of fun. So let's go to the main group while we're here. I'll put you up there, and let's see what we got here. We gotta scroll down. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's something we've been thinking about for a long time, called the Intergalactic News. In the past, getting ready for celebration. A friend of mine for a long time talking about the experience of coming over from overseas, wherever you are in the planet, other than the United States of America, how to prepare. First and foremost, if you don't know who I am, I'm Spencer. I'm one of the admins for this group and one of the founders of the Virtual Cantina. For those who don't know, this episode will be on the Virtual Cantina network on YouTube later on this evening, which is youtube.com/the Virtual Cantina Network. And I'm very excited about this episode, in particular because I tout every time, first and foremost, we're not associated or Disney, we're a fan group. Celebration before 27 research after London to find people who listen to podcasts, and through this group before we took off, podcast called Lava the Hut. And little did I know is that someone who I became really good was one of the hosts of that show, unbeknownst to me. But he gave me a lot of my first celebration, even though I was coming to a United States con. Fast forward to 2017, day one. I'm online to get in for the 40th anniversary panel, and I just happened to start talking with this lad right next to me, and we were really hitting it off. We didn't even announce each other's names. We were just chatting because we were staying each other online. And in his Baroque accent, "Are you Spencer?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "I'm Gary." And I'm like, "Holy cow." Needless to say, after that, offshoot room for the 40th anniversary panel, which to this day is the best panel I've ever been to, ever seen any con. And no matter where you go, I'm ruined for life because no panel is going to ever match up to that one. So welcome from Scotland watching with us right now, which is fantastic. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my mate, one of my best friends in the entire galaxy, Gary O'Toole from Blob the Hut and the 501st of the Ireland Garrison.
Brother, how are you? It's been too long since we got to talk all things celebration.
Oh, absolutely fantastic. I'm so happy to have you on this. I know you and I have been talking about doing something like this for a very, very long time. So if anybody's got questions, please put it into the chat. I will read it off either as we go or later on, but I'm mostly going to be handing this off to Gary. And for the most part, like I said, this is for the experience of coming over from overseas. However, we'll touch upon stuff that will be applicable to those who are already in the United States. So Gary, why don't you tell us a little bit about your Star Wars journey before we kick off into the nitty-gritty about celebration?
My Star Wars journey, I suppose, is sort of the classic story in that I was a prequel era kid who Revenge of the Sith is my movie. It always has been, and in particular, it always will be. And I suppose, in a sense, it was the prequels that developed my obsession with Star Wars, and from that, then I was obviously able to fall in love with the original trilogy. In terms of deep diving into Star Wars, obviously that branched off into a whole number of things, from being a member of the 501st Legion and the Emerald Garrison. So building my own Star Wars costumes, of which I have a number of them. So I would mostly be known for my costumes is I have a New Hope Stormtrooper, a TIE pilot, and probably most famously known for my New Hope Jawa as well, which always goes down a treat. And obviously from that, then this crazy little thing called Blabba the Hutt developed. I met a very good friend, Jamie, who was a Blabba himself, and came on to Blabba, and I had another couple of podcasts and boards where I was writing, guest articles and doing guest hosting and things like that. And then it just became this crazy thing where we're lucky enough to host panels at conventions here in Ireland. We've been part of the Irish media team covering conventions all around the world, and we are lucky enough to have a great relationship with Abrams Books and Penguin Publishing, where we get to review a lot of the literature before it comes out. So it sort of started off as just a little bit of a hobby, and it's turned into this crazy obsession that just continues to grow and grow.
Absolutely fantastic. So, Gary, what was your first celebration?
Oh gosh, I think I'm still in lockdown mode. So the one that will just spring to mind, I suppose, is sort of my real true first experience with Star Wars Celebration was 2016 in the XL Centre in London, for the simple reason that that was sort of the first time we got on the media radar, and we were lucky enough to actually host a panel there as well, which was an incredible experience for us. And that's sort of what I suppose propelled us further into the sort of stratosphere of the media world, and got us kind of well known around Europe and the UK, which was just it was a phenomenal experience. For those who have never been to a celebration outside of the US, celebrations Europe/UK is a completely different ball game entirely. It's a totally different experience. The numbers are nowhere near as big, so the queues are a lot less long. You get maybe a little bit more one-on-one time with the guests, and they particularly never run out of merch, which is always a good thing.
Fantastic. Well, Stuart, our family member from Scotland, who is at the 2016 XL. That's pretty awesome. So I'm going to pretty much hand this over to you at this particular time, Gary. Why don't you go through, point by point, what people should. We're going to talk about the before celebration, the during celebration, and the after celebration as someone who's coming from abroad. So I'm going to lead us to Gary. If you have questions, put them in the chat. At breaks, I will talk. I'll mention to Gary, but take it away, good sir.
Okay, so the first thing I suppose we should run through is when you are getting prepared to travel to the United States. Obviously, all of your travel documents, you need to make sure you're packed and things like that. But the number one thing that I do want to point out is that you need to make sure you have your ESTA, which is the International Visa Waiver Program. And the reason I mentioned that is there are third-party websites which do the ESTAs, but they will actually rip you off, and you will end up paying a hell of a lot more than you should. So your ESTA from the official website, and Spencer will maybe just give the sort of the page link to it, which people can then go to. Maybe we can post up at the end when we're done. But the official ESTA
what's the URL? Put in the chat right now.
Yep. So have you got the link there to it, or do you want me to just call it out to you?
Just call it out and I'll type in the chat.
Yep. So it's ESTA.cbp.dhs.gov. That is the official ESTA website. That is the government website, and you will pay $10 plus the $4 processing fee if everything is accepted. So in total, $14. Do not get ripped off by third-party websites and applications, which you see some of them charging like $25, $40 for an ESTA. And there are a lot of international travelers who have gotten ripped off in the past. So just please beware of that and make sure you get your ESTA from the correct site. Because if you are not cleared to travel and you turn up without an ESTA, Homeland Security are not letting you in. It is plain and simple as that.
Excellent. So we have someone actually waving and saying hello to you, Gary. Our good friend April. She's waving in the crowd right now.
Hey, stranger, long time no see. Familiar faces.
Excellent. So
tonight,
what else
Spencer,
would you
yeah?
recommend?
So travel
Besides that,
essentials. Ideally, there are two kind of things that we talk about when preparing for celebration. And number one, Spencer, I think you'll probably agree with me, and this is something that I say to everyone: whatever your ideal experience for Star Wars Celebration is, throw it out the window, because as happens with cons, your ideal plan is more likely not going to come to fruition. There are going to be lots of chopping and changing throughout the con. So your ideal con might be the ideal of a couple of other thousand people. So that's just something that you need to be aware of. From that, then, when you're traveling over, obviously if you're traveling in groups, make sure you have all the relevant contact information, you know your flights, you know your connecting details, because when you go through immigration in the States, they will ask you that. So if you are staying in a particular hotel or Airbnb, make sure you do know your actual address, because you can actually be asked that. It may seem like a trivial thing, but it is quite important when you're going through immigration with Homeland Security. Apart from that, then make sure you pack everything in your case that you need. Comfortable clothes is a big one, and wear a comfortable pair of trainers before you go. Make sure you bring trainers that you know you can spend a lot of time in, because the convention center in Anaheim is very, very big, so you will cover a lot of mileage as you go along. And I think Spencer would agree with me that dressing comfortably and appropriately for a con makes all the difference in the world.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, making sure that, obviously you're in regalia, wherever that's going to be for Star Wars. You might see a lot of shirts out there that might be the same. I put myself since day one to look for obscure shirts, just because it's a lot of fun looking at people. Oh my God, that's awesome! Where'd you get that? Oh, T Public, great. Could you get me the link while you're there? Because now it's great with smartphones or anything of that nature. But making sure you're comfortable, making sure that you have like snacks, because it's expensive. Gary's going to talk a little about that. I talked several times about the fact of having a good Brita bottle, because water could be quite expensive in any of the hot. Like I have this great one right here that my wife just got me, and I usually fill it up with a bottle of water, some ice, and some electrolytes like Propel or something like that, to keep me going. And maybe have to fill it up maybe once or twice during the day, but those are essentials that you want to make sure for celebration. But Gary to make sure that especially coming in, what you should do once you get into the United States, after you get through customs and get to your hotel, figuring out how to maneuver your way around parts.
Yeah, so getting the lay of the land is incredibly important, especially around Anaheim. If you haven't been there, there are a lot of travel options, and it is a little bit winding in terms of finding your way around. So when we talk about getting the lay of the land, we've sort of broken it into a few different areas. So obviously getting the lay of the land with respect to the convention center and the transport options, and that's in terms of the routes maybe to and from your hotel. Obviously, as you get more familiar with the area, you will pick up directions to go in, and it will become more familiar with you too. But from that, then always make sure that you are finding out the location of convenience stores, and particularly what Spencer mentioned, that you're going to need to stop up on drinks, whether it's electrolyte drinks, water, and any snackables, which are going to be vitally important for the long days. And believe us, they will be long days. But another thing to mention, which is vitally important, that I don't think a lot of people really pay attention to, is within the local area, and you can ask this at your hotel with the local concierge as well, be aware of any emergency medical clinics that are nearby, and take use take note of their phone numbers and in particular their email addresses, because not all surgeries and emergency clinics will operate an immediate out of hours clinic. You may have to wait a little bit of time, but just taking note of that is incredibly crucial.
Absolutely. So besides the fact, one thing we talked about before, which, which is funny, I was laughing, uh, our moderator April through you didn't have a SIM card.
Yeah.
Dash.
So
So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
So that is one of the top tips I give if you are traveling with more than one device. So obviously you will have your iPhone and you'll have your primary SIM card in it. For those of you who are in Europe, the European roaming charges have obviously gone up again. But when you go to the States on the networks, the charges are absolutely crazy, and that's for using your data. So what I sort of recommend is that a lot of the American networks, particularly I think T-Mobile or Verizon were the ones that I had previously used, Spencer, where you can actually buy a prepaid top-up 5G SIM card. And particularly when I'm traveling for the likes of my media duties, I will actually put that into my iPad just so I will always have access to cellular data and 5G. You know, that's whether I need to post stuff on social media, but more importantly, if you're traveling in a group, it will allow you to keep in contact with your traveling party. And that's important because you may have a member in your traveling party who might be a nervous traveler. They don't like being on their own, or they may not know everyone in your group. And if somebody gets separated, it just provides you with a really simple way of being able to link up. And the way we used to do it was, if a member of our party would get missing, if everyone had access to their SIM card, somebody might take a picture of the closest landmark within the convention center to them, and they would post a picture, and everyone would know whether they need to meet up on that sign or at a particular booth. So it just saves a lot of time, that if somebody gets lost, that you are able to reunite with your party relatively quickly. And also in case of emergency, it's a huge thing as well.
Absolutely. So we always say that's crucial. And obviously we talk about, things that you should have in your bag at all times, including, having a good brick to charge your phone, charge your iPad, because there might not be plugs anywhere. I mean, I remember waiting online for Timothy Zahn in Orlando, being a greenhorn I was, and my phone dying. So luckily someone had an extra brick on them, and I've never lost that again. But we'll talk about that in future news desks. But because that's very generic as far as getting ready for celebration is concerned. One question we get a lot, especially from a lot of newbies coming into celebration, is obviously with the lotteries and with the panel, since there's no overnights anymore to get the bracelets, they're concerned about the fact of activating their passes and will call. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the will call, how it was like in Orlando, and how you were able to get everything you need there. And obviously it's changed a little bit because of Chicago, and obviously with COVID they announced that it's going to be full lottery anyway, but the principles are relatively the same. It's just different principles of everything that's going on.
Yeah, 100%. So I suppose another little tip that I would throw in there, and this is particularly relevant to roll call, is that if you are going to celebration, if you can arrive ideally 2 days before, I have found that to be the best option. And that's for a number of reasons. One, it will allow you to scope out the area and get the lay of the land and become familiar with it. But also then it will allow you to go to roll call, and whether you are picking up your pre-ordered merchandise or whether you are picking up your passes. Now, I would hope and I would suspect, Spencer, I'm sure you'll agree with me on this one, that at Orlando, when we were at Celebration in Orlando, the passes were already pre-activated. Now, unless there is a major change due to COVID, I would imagine that your passes are already going to be pre-activated, or they will have some kind of a barcode on them, which you will then be able to link to your celebration account, whether that's via your email address or whatever the case may be, for accessing the lotteries for the panel or any convention exclusive merch. So I would suspect they should be pre-activated. unless there's an absolute dramatic change, which I don't think it would make sense that they weren't, because there's a lot of people going to be picking up tickets for will call, and will call does take a bit of time. So ideally, the earlier you can get there to get your lanyard, get your program, whatever the case may be, get that ASAP. But in terms of those worrying about the passes being activated, obviously very right to be concerned about that, but I would suspect that they should be pre-activated, and if they're not, then I would imagine the instructions will probably be released closer to the time, maybe a month before, something along those lines, like bang on. They're usually just released beforehand.
Yeah, I don't foresee them knowing the fact that people are going to be coming from overseas, just going to let the lotteries happen without allowing the members and the family members from outside of the United States ample time to get as much time to order and everything as everybody who's in the United States. Was there an overnight in London in 2016?
No, there actually didn't need to be, because again, with Celebration Europe, it's a different ballgame. The queues are not that long. So when it was in the XL Centre in London, the vast majority of us stayed in one of the hotels just by the O2. So what we used to do is we used to get the Sky Car over in the morning, and even if we were there maybe, let's say, an hour, half an hour before opening, we would get in reasonably comfortably, and we would be in line for merch, and we would essentially get through queuing for your two panels per day within the space of 45 minutes to an hour and a half, which is a huge difference compared to the 17, 19 hour Spencer that we slept on the floors waiting for our wristbands.
Oh, that was absolutely ridiculous. And even
Yeah.
after all that, we still end up in satellite. But even satellite was absolutely fantastic. It was real. I mean, when George and Harrison came on stage and we were in the satellite, we were standing up applauding, and it was just to a movie screen.
Yeah.
So it's still a great experience. But the experience is that you get to be with people of all walks of life, loving the same thing you love, and it doesn't matter what aspect of it as at all. um I mean, I can say that when names were starting to be announced for Orlando, and I was messaging with Gary. Obviously, for him, he was emotional when Hayden was announced. First Hayden, Comic-Con anywhere in the world. And as you mentioned, as a prequel kid, uh, that was to him that that's his Darth Vader, that's his Anakin Skywalker right then and there.
And I was the last person allowed to get a signature. I was the last person stopped in line because Hayden was late coming back after his lunch, so I had been the cutoff point.
That's pretty incredible. So as far as that, we talked about will call. You talked about getting the late coming in a couple of days before. Obviously trying to kick some of the jet lag. Get the lay of the land, find the restaurants, go to CVS or Walmart, nearby, Target, load up on stuff. So you got everything situated. Coming from international, let's just say, for example, you're bringing. I recommend when I'm bringing Funko to any con around the country, I take it out of the box and I fold it up and I put it into an accordion folder. That way I can get as many Funkos in there, and it just fits nicely into my backpack. I did that in Chicago. But if you're bringing over books, if you're bringing over, figures that have the blister pack, anything of substance. I know, like, you had your Book of the Sith and the Book of the Jedi and things in Orlando. How would you recommend transporting stuff of size, and not just we'll talk about obviously your kit, if you were going to transport your kit to cosplay over here, but what would you recommend to, as far as the stuff that you want to potentially get signed, that might be of a little more size than a typical 8x10, 11x14 print?
So the key thing with something like the prints is you need to make sure that it does not bend. That is the crucial thing. It may sound trivial, but if you've got that in a case that you've got maybe a 25 kilo weight limit, whatever the case, but you need to make sure that it does not bend. So if you have local comic shops in your area, talk to them. They will have protectors for various comics and prints and different sizes. A good thing with that is actually when you are folding away your clothes, if you've got something like a heavy duty jumper or sweater, actually wrap that in them. It actually will make a difference. And when I'm traveling with something like that, Spencer, I have like a hard kind of little clamshell briefcase that I travel with.
Mhm.
Um, and that's one way to do it, but also, and this is more so in relation to if you are going to be bringing your kit or things like that, make sure you know the airline policy with respect to the weight of your case. Obviously, if you are going to Celebration, you are going to be spending money and you are going to be coming home with merch. So one little tip, and again, it's not rocket science, but it is something that does make a difference. Use the biggest hand luggage bag that you can find, because what you can fit in there will actually take off weight that you could be bringing stuff home in your suitcase with, and it will make a difference. But yeah, classic protectors. Always have spare cardboard. I know when we finished our day in Celebration, we went to like a local pizzeria one night, and we just actually asked them, could we have one of your heavy duty cardboard boxes? And what we actually did was we actually cut the cardboard to actually fit the shape of the prints, and we actually then taped them together in the clear plastic protectors, so it kept its shape. So little hints and tips like that, whatever you can do to secure it. But if you're traveling with prints, clear protectors and cardboard is always a good one. If you're traveling with something a little more heavy duty, like a Funko, like what Spencer was talking about, something like bubble wrap works really well, or something that's actually very, very light, if you can find it, is a little bit of EVA foam, or like the soundproofing foam that you would find in a booth, because it will actually mold to the shape of it, and it is quite soft and will allow you to bring it anywhere, and it will provide a good protection as well.
So changing currency, that's another thing they should look at before they're leaving, because whatever exchange rate is going to be, obviously the dollar's not strong at this current juncture, and it's probably not going to be in the next 60 days. But talk about the best way for them to exchange money before obviously they come to the United States.
So particularly with Ireland, as an example, and I'm sure it's the same in a lot of other countries. The options, again, as Spencer mentioned, the dollar is not very strong, particularly against the euro at the moment. So what you're better off doing is you can transfer your money through the post offices. Lately have had the best bureau de change exchange rate, or you can take a leap out of sort of the more experienced congoers. And if you use a prepaid top-up card, let's say maybe something like a Revolut card, if you top that up and you pay for something, you will get what the full exchange rate is at that time. It's not like when you go into, let's say, a bureau de change, and you have to pay commission on your final tally. If you top up a prepaid card and you pay with that, whether that is contactlessly or whether it is chip and pin, you will get the full exchange rate at that time. So if it was me, I would say have a Revolut card topped up, and maybe have some cash that you can keep in the hotel safe. But if you are changing money, do it ahead of time. Do not do it in the USA, because the bank charges now in the ATMs have gone a little crazy as well. I think last year when I took out $50, I think there was something like nearly a 650, 750 charge on top of that from a savings account, which is not going to run it all the time if people are drawing out large amounts. So if you are changing money, change it before you go.
The one thing I always say, and I say this to all our members, is when it comes to Celebration, cash is king. The ATMs
Yeah.
at Celebration or any Comic Con you go to are notoriously long and run out quickly. And I know at the food court, when we had that food court in Orlando, um, my um, my stripe got swiped, got skimmed, and that's
Mm-hmm.
notorious for Celebration, unfortunately. So making sure that you have cash and this is for any of our family members, um, get your American dollar as soon as you possibly can. Get, if you have to go to an ATM, try to find the local ATM that's nearby, or when you're going to CVS or Walgreens, if there's one nearby your hotel, hit the ATM there. But do not hit the ATM in the convention hall. It's just not going to be the strongest force. One of our members, John Notman, good chap from Wales, says he recommends a telescope document holder for signed prints.
Uh, I have seen something similar like that, yeah. Or what you are seeing as well is you know, the expandable poster rollers. But the only thing
Mm-hmm.
is, some people do not like their posters rolled unless they're actually reasonably able to do it. But something like that would be perfect. What you're also seeing now is if you've ever seen anybody who collects like top cards, they have those really heavy duty protective briefcases. I've actually seen people mod them to hold Funkos or to hold prints as well. But yeah, anything like that would be absolutely ideal for us.
So, as far as during con, obviously we talked about protecting your autographs, protecting your investments, and hopefully you're at one of the close by satellite hotels. They can sometimes during the day run it back to your hotel, drop it off, and then bring it back. I mean, go back if you need to be. What other things should someone who is coming from overseas keep in mind during celebration? I mean, I know celebration in general, for even if someone comes from the United States, is overwhelming. There's so much you can do, and things can literally go until all hours of the night, i.e., going to still, I say, is one of the best parties I've ever been to in my entire life, of the 501st Bash with Weird Al, and to the
Yeah.
point where I had to go to 501st in Chicago, which is fantastic. But what things should they look out for that's going to make their experience that much better?
The one thing I would say is, you're at a convention with like-minded people. Get to know everyone. Talk to them in line. You are going to meet like-minded people. If you are a cosplayer, chances are you are going to bump into somebody with the same costume as you. You are going to be admiring other people's costumes, and they will be admiring yours. And it is an atmosphere where you will pick up and meet people and develop friendships and bonds. And I know that may sound a bit, corny, but it's true. I mean, look at myself and Spencer. We literally just met at a con, and I mean, we've kind of been blood brothers ever since. So get to know people at the con. Don't be afraid to speak up and talk to people. If I could just backtrack a bit from that, it is something that might help and something that people will need to be aware of. If you are attending a couple of days before for will call, use that time to actually get the lay of the land inside the convention center, and pay particular attention to the likes of the quiet rooms, the bathrooms, the first aid locations, but also any vendors that you may want to pick things up for. Because aside from the celebration exclusive merch, there may be artists and vendors and things like that that will have convention exclusive merch themselves, and they usually sell out pretty quickly. So getting the lay of the land with something like that is quite important. But in terms of stuff like that, also one thing that you may want to do is, to make your experience a little bit safer, is if you are using a card, make sure you have maybe a wallet or a protector, which is or protective of RFID. We have seen people get scammed. I think, Spencer, we met a couple of people at Orlando that it happened to. So being able to keep your cards protected is a big one. But in terms of making the experience enjoyable, keep a check on your convention essentials. They are going to be long days. So one thing I do recommend is, if you've ever seen, Spencer, if you remember my little fold-up chair,
Yep.
my little fold-up chair that will come apart. So there are going to be long days. So having somewhere to actually sit down is important. And something like those little fold-up chairs, we can maybe put a link up at some point. They do not go against the props and weapons policy within the convention. You'll see people with them all the time. That's a big thing to have, just to have a little bit of a rest and a little bit of a respite. Other than that, I would say the convention is what you make it. So if you were going to be having that overall experience open up and get to talk to people, go explore. If you are going over to the convention and you don't get selected for the lottery, that sometimes is one of the best things that can happen to you, because you then have time to go and walk the floor. You get to see all of the vendors, the props, the dioramas, and you never know who you will bump into. There are famous people within the Star Wars slash LFL realm who sometimes just go there themselves, and you can end up bumping into them without them being an official guest. So you never know what opportunities may come.
Now, here's something that's very big, and it went viral after Chicago. Is the show floor. Now, you might not get into the panel for the main room for the panels, but they always show the major panels by the Star Wars show stage at all the celebrations. And the one thing that they showed more often than inside the actual Wintrust Center in Chicago was the floor, the con floor during the Rise of
The trailer.
Skywalker reveal, and
Yeah.
also when Ian showed up. I
Yeah.
was literally in the front row on the barrier by the stage. But they showed the floor. They didn't show they showed obviously inside, but they showed the floor more than they did that. Sometimes, like Gary was saying, is being on the floor for panels after not getting in the lottery is some of the best experiences there, and you feel like you're just out
Mm.
there, and you get to be part of history in that sort of capacity as well. So you never know what's going to happen on the show floor, who's going to show up. I mean, uh, after the 40th anniversary panel, George and Harrison went to the main stage on the floor,
Yeah.
and we're on the Star Wars show. So they were literally, couple hundred feet, a couple feet away from the fans right there. And who would have thought at that time? I mean, I know it was uh, Gary and I were bawling, in the actual panel when both those guys showed up because we didn't expect
Yeah.
them to be there. And then obviously, Carrie's daughter and the John Williams in the Orlando Symphony Orchestra, doing the tribute for Leia and all that, playing us out. I mean, it was just like you never know what's going to happen on the floor right there. But there's something that I actually want to bring up here in this sort of capacity. And I've refined it a little bit after conversation with Gary, and I talk about it is the rule of three, which is what you have to do, what you want to do, and if there's extra time, what you are okay with missing, but it would add something to your trip. Now, here's the same thing about celebration. Celebration is, lack of a better word, cookie cutter. There's no rhyme or reason. They usually do similar, same structure in everyone with its own nuances. So if you are in the process of putting together what you think might be the best celebration possible for yourself, talk to vets within the group, listen to Gary's podcast, listen to other podcasts around there, read articles about celebration, and just start making a list of things you may want to do. There might be, they already announced first and foremost, opening panel is going to be a massive reveal of everything that's Disney Plus. They talk
Yeah.
Kenobi, they're talking Andor, they're talking Mandalorian, and then Mandalorian's going to get its own panel on top of that. So, figuring out what you want to do as far as panels are concerned. Know, right now a lot of people are saying I might want to go to a panel, but I have all these autographs. I don't know what time it is. Once the schedule comes out, you're going to be able to maneuver your autographs in your photo ops, hopefully within a time that says, okay, if I'm able to get into this panel, I can manipulate to go into this time or that or the other. And usually, for the most part, if you miss your time because you're in a panel, as long as it's the same day and your QR code's not already swiped, then they'll let you into the line at a later time. It's that sort of scenario. But making sure that you know what you want to do and having the plan B and the plan C will make sure that you have the best celebration possible. I mean, the research gave me the best first celebration. And I mentioned to everybody I only did 3 photo ops in Orlando. But I also noticed after that I had so much free time that once I got involved in autographing, honestly, I only did one panel in Chicago and I still had an incredible time on the autograph hall, walking the floor, talking with people, and we already had the group going on. But Gary, making sure your best celebration. I mean, how important is that?
It's vitally important. And as I said, conventions like that are what you make of them. You have to accept from the start that there will be things that go wrong. You will have to adapt and chop and change throughout the convention. That's just part of con life. And to be honest, it's part of the fun as well, because if you have this regimented plan and it doesn't work out, you would be surprised just how fun and I suppose rewarding a little bit of spontaneity in there can be. I mean, we were the same, Spencer, when we first started going to cons. We said, I want to do XYZ, and you want to do all of this on the same day all at once. And as you get a little bit more experience, you learn it's not going to happen. And as Spencer said with his sort of rule of three, I sort of segregate. I sort of have a little bit of a different variation where when I'm going to a con, I have 2 A's, 2 B's, and 2 C's. 2 A's are my top priorities, of which I'm not willing to miss out on. The 2 B's are secondary, where if I can get them, I'm really happy. And the C's are a fallback option. But anything outside of that is an absolute bonus. And, a lot of people who are going to this are spending their hard-earned money. And when you are going to something like this, especially with it being the first convention after a pandemic, everyone who is going to this event deserves to have it be the best event that they have ever been to. And, it is what you make of it, but you're going to have so many opportunities, and there will be a little bit of sensory overload. As Spencer said, it's overwhelming with all the sights, sounds, smells, all the different dioramas, all the different sets.
Speaking of smells, make sure you have deodorant.
Yeah, don't be that person in line, for the love of God. Don't be that person that whacks a ball. Keep some deodorant or baby wipes around in your bag. That's just good con etiquette more than anything else.
Yeah,
without a doubt. I mean, we had some experience when we slept on the floor for that long with deodorant less people. We can tell you that much. It ain't pretty. No.
No, so it's definitely an experience. Now, getting ready to leave Celebration, which is a heartache in itself. How do you prepare to close out Celebration the right way and get ready to head back home? I mean, obviously, you have the distraction of literally a 10-minute walk down the street is downtown Disney and Magic Kingdom and California Adventure, and obviously there's gonna be a lot of people heading over to Batu West. But making the best out of your time while you're still over there. What's your recommendations as you're preparing to end your celebration experience? Maybe you're staying on or you're heading back home to make sure that everything is right for when you're leaving the United States.
Well, that should start at the end of each day of the con. When you have finished your first day, and let's say you've gotten a number of autographs, or you've met up with people, you've gotten, whether it's a Funko sign, you've gotten an art print, whatever it is, when you get home, even though you are tired, take 15, 20 minutes each day to actually do a stock take of what you have. And what I sort of do, and I think I've spoken to Spencer about this previously, is for my merch that I am bringing home, I have a little bag pack, and I actually draw up a checklist before I go. So when I get home that evening, I know that I can tick off, I did this, I did this, I did this, this is in the bag, this is in the bag. And I know that stuff is packed away safe and sound, that the only time I will have to go back to it is the last day when I am doing my final pack and check. That's one thing. Another thing that's probably important is if you are with people, you are probably going to exchange details, because you are going to meet people that you are going to want to stay in contact with. So having your contact details on a card, whether you print it out, because not all international guests will actually have access to the Wi-Fi, and if their network is not working, they won't be able to, text and actually email through at times. So being able to just spontaneously have contact information there, or where people can follow you on social media if you have a cosplay page, or whether you might be a prop builder, or just somebody who's a fan wanting to connect with like-minded people. And that is a good one, just to have, I suppose, like a con business card, something like that. It makes things an awful lot easier. The other thing then is make sure that when you do the will call, that you actually study the program and the map, because 9 times out of 10 on the last day, you will discover a vendor or a section of the con that you had not seen during your first couple of days. And you might find that the queue is madness, and and you're shaking your head because you know exactly what I'm on about, that
Yep.
people
The
just
last
don't
day
see it until the last day.
that room, the final first room that we had all the props and the costumes, everything like that. Like I thought, I was like, oh my god, that was probably one of the best things I saw in Orlando, like bar none.
It's soul destroying when that happens, because you've spent your first couple of days in sensory overload, and for the first couple of days you are effectively on autopilot. You are just sleep deprived, although it mightn't be too bad now, being you won't be too sleep deprived because the overnights are gone, so it's the luck of the draw with the lottery. But discovering a new area, or maybe a vendor or someone's work that you want to go see on the last day, and you get there and the queue is already just out the door and you've got maybe 2 or 3 hours left of the con, it is one of the most soul destroying things that you can do. So take the time to look at that map and that program, find out who is there. And also, if you see any vendors work that you like, make sure you give them if you've got access to your 5G, give them a quick follow on social media and turn on the notifications, because if they are bringing new stock every day to Celebration, the first page they will post it will be on their own. It won't be on the Celebration network. So that way, then if you are looking to pick up maybe a present for someone or a souvenir, or you're just an art collector, you have, you will obviously be seeing it from their feed directly, and that can kind of set you up for the day, and that, when you get there, I need to pick up XYZ, and it will allow you to plan around your route on your day, which is part of making the experience the best it can be, is planning to do as much as you can in as little time as possible.
Absolutely. So we're getting get ready to do a question answer session. So if you have any questions for Gary or for myself, please put it into the chat right now. A couple of things I want to plug right now. As we mentioned, the after hours events are always things that you want to look for, because you can really burn the candle at both ends if you want to. Plus, also, it's a great way to meet other members and have lifelong friends, like I bet with Gary, and like I bet with April through Gary and other members throughout, at the Final First Bash. But also want to plug, first and foremost, if you're coming in on Tuesday before Celebration, we are going to be, the virtual cantina is presenting the Not So Virtual Cantina, which is going to be at the Anaheim Hilton lobby bar from 8 to 11. So come join us, trade some swag, have a drink or two, just get to know some people for Celebration. And then the following night, we have the third annual Bunta Eve Cantina, which is highlighted by the Alderaan Idol karaoke competition, but also autograph signings from Kevin Thompson, Eric Walker, uh, Tim Donaldson, Dominic Pace, and Leilani and Ariel Shu, along with authors such as Richard Wawalski, Tracy and Kevin Thompson, as well as Craig Miller. So you can get some autographs, you do some karaoke, you can have a few drinks, listen to a podcast. It's just gonna be a great way, because you're gonna make friends to go the rest of the trip. If you're ever feeling like you're going alone, you're gonna meet some people that really do care about you, and we love having you as members of our virtual Cantina family. So keep that in mind. Our events, there's other events out there, Rebel Force Radio, the 501st Bash, um, the Droid Builders. There's a lot of Star Wars groups, but keep track of the virtual Cantina while you're at Celebration as well, because our group is fantastic and our team is fantastic, and they'll be posting updates on what's going on around the con floor. Watch out, because we're going to be live, on our Facebook page and all our events during the day. And if we get to 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube page, which is youtube.com/the virtual cantina network, before we get to Celebration, then we're going to be able to broadcast live directly to YouTube from the floor, which would be absolutely fantastic. So keep in mind from there. But here's a question for you, for Gary. So we have some members obviously going to be going to Batu.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, either you're going to Batu before Celebration or you're going directly after Celebration. Or some people are, only going to do a half a day of con and go to Batu. Obviously, besides pacing yourself in your finances and not realizing, oh my God, look at these legacy lightsabers. I gotta go to Savi's. I gotta go, oh gosh, oh my God, Rise of the Resistance, like overloaded in there. So how would you recommend balancing Salvation and also going to Galaxy's Edge in your same trip?
Well, this is a bit of a double-edged sword, and I suppose I'm going to be kind of devil's advocate here, because if a lot of people are going to be going to Celebration in the morning, obviously the evening time in Batu should be quieter. However, there are probably a lot of people who are just going to be thinking the exact same way you are. So, with certain days of the con, we usually find that the first day and the last day of the con are complete and utter chaos. They are the two busiest days by an absolute mile. But also, you need to factor in the fact that obviously Celebration goes all day, but when you go to Batu, you will be in the theme parks where there will also be potentially nighttime events running, and you need to consider the additional cost as well, because it is not cheap to go there. And Spencer, we were discussing this as well, where if there are after hours events, on top of you having your ticket for the theme parks, you will need to have another ticket for those nighttime events, because if you don't, when the regular operating hours end, out you go.
Yeah,
So you
Disney After
need to
Dark. It's
consider the
been sold
additional
out for a long
cost.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. So you need to consider that. If I was being honest, I would do Celebration during the day and then Batu in the evenings. But I would suggest, if you are going to do Batu, do it in the middle days of Celebration, not the first and last, because if somebody has just arrived and after Celebration, they are probably going to want to do everything on the first day. They're going to go to Oga's Cantina. They want to go to Savi's. They want to go to Dock and Bay 7, to try some of the local galactic cuisine. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of factoring into, but it's more so the additional cost, I would say, beware of. But if you want to go to Batu, I would say do it in the evenings, but don't do it on the first or last day of Celebration. And that relates back again to, if you can get there maybe a day or two early, you can get your will call done. And then for that entire day, off you go to Batu. And the one thing that we probably will point out as well, Spencer, is that obviously there is a Galaxy's Edge in Florida versus being in Anaheim, but Disney in Florida versus Disney in Anaheim is a totally different ball game in terms of size and numbers. So
I
that's
was
something that you need
actually,
to be
oh my
aware
God.
of.
So I went to Anaheim for the first time in probably 40 some odd years this past December, and met up with a number of our members there. And honestly, I didn't get to maybe a third of what I wanted to do at Disneyland proper, because it
Yeah.
was, you had Batu in Disneyland proper. It's not like there's a Hollywood Studios there. If you want to take Magic Kingdom and add 3 parks to it, that's Disneyland proper over at in California. So keep that in mind. Is that, if you're planning to do Disneyland and you want to do more than just Galaxy's Edge, plan a couple of days there, because the fact is that you're going to have Batu, which you could spend an entire day if you want to in Batu, or going all the way around. But also remember, across the walking of the park, the promenade is Disney California Adventure, and that has the Avengers campus, which is awesome in itself. And then Web Slingers, it just opened there a little while before I arrived, which was actually a lot of fun. Um, but Anaheim, we have members in the group right now saying that if you do on the 27th, you'll get kicked out by 9 p.m. for Disney After Dark for Star Wars night. Also,
There you
but
go.
the nighttime is a lot quieter around Batu than is obviously during the day, because obviously during the day a lot of Padawans and families are coming at that particular time. So keep
Yeah.
that in mind. Is that if you're not going to go to any of the after events, um, that might be a good time to do that. I recommend trying to figure out, like I said, do your research. Traditionally, the 501st Bash is Thursday night. It's usually the first night of con. So if that's something that you want to do, which I recommend, that anybody who can get a ticket should go. It is the party to go to, besides our own events, which are always, or our pre-events. But the event to go to is 501st. Like we said, sitting there in a hotel ballroom with 3,000 people singing Saga Begins is probably one of the best experiences of my life. And then, obviously we had Cano Bite in Chicago, and who knows what's going to happen this year. But think about that, is that maybe start tickets for Disney have already gone on sale. Make your park reservation, buy them now, because I guarantee once the people get to town, they're gonna be like, I might have some time. I want to go over to Disney, especially go over to Batu. And if there's a panel or anything about Galaxy's Edge, like there was in Chicago, there's gonna be a rush of people trying to get over there. So try to get your tickets now. So you at least have that out of the way. You not have to worry about your park reservations. You're not gonna be able to get in. Um, Anything else, before we wrap up tonight, Gary, that you think that is very pressing for those coming from overseas to know about coming for
Yeah,
Celebration or for
yeah,
Galaxy's Edge?
maybe a couple of quick little things. It's probably something that I probably should have mentioned earlier, but they've just popped into my head now. Number one, you mentioned autographs. If you are going to be autograph hunting, bring your own Sharpies. Bring your own good quality Sharpies, because 9 times out of 10 you want the color and they have already run out of if the lines are long. Number two, please make sure you bring enough adapters. And if you are bringing to the con, make sure, because there will be some power outlets that you will find. Don't ask me how, but you will see some people sitting at a wall with access to power adapters. Make sure you have the right adapter that it will fit your devices. And one other thing that's probably quite important to mention as well is that the staff are there to help. They are incredibly nice people, and particularly maybe with respect to will call, if you are meeting with the floor staff, there is no harm asking them and having a little chat and getting the lay of the land from them, because they will have already be trained in on where everything is going to be, where the queues are going to commence, and what the general layout is looking like. So there's no harm getting in touch with them to actually, get the lay of the land from a different perspective and to become more familiar with the layout itself. That's just something that is very useful, and you see a lot of people do it at will call. When they get there, they collect their program and they literally open the map and have a look, and they'll call someone over and say, sorry, can you tell me where this is or what direction it would be in? And people know from will call that it may be straight down the hall and off to the left, because sometimes the maps aren't the clearest depending on where the convention entrance is, but it is useful to call on the staff, because that's what they're there for. And remember, most of them are volunteers. There are a lot of them who are just volunteers. They are volunteering their own time. They are comic fans just like us. So be kind to the staff, because they are there to help, and they are giving up their own time so that you can have an incredible time at the con. So just be mindful of that.
Absolutely. So we had one question from
Yeah.
Mark, who is one of our moderators and also as a member of the Makazi squad in Orlando. He wants to know where he can get one of those nifty shirts and jumpers that you're wearing currently, because he's a member of the 501st himself here and wants to support you guys.
So for those who are probably unaware, the 501st Ireland merch is some of the most sought after merchandise in the entire 501st. The runs are quite limited and they don't happen very often. Unfortunately, this hoodie is part of an older run that was done, and there's no other merch on the horizon as of yet. But what I would say is stick to our social media, or if there is something announced, of which I have no idea whether there's going to be, most people, if they have contacts in the Iron Garrison, they will probably hear about it once it's announced. So I have no doubt that will go out. But until then, it's these are just for us at the moment, unfortunately. But I will be in Florida in September, so hopefully I can catch up with some of my Florida brothers and sisters at some point.
When in September?
The 8th.
I'm gonna miss you like by 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But
so
we had a great time when we
the
ran into each other.
yeah.
When we were
Oh,
both
we
there
did
that one time.
we did the VR experience, which was incredible.
Oh, that was incredible. Power of the Force. If you can do if they have
Yeah.
that, it was fantastic. And Gary, if people want to listen to Blah with the Hut, how would someone be able to listen to your show?
Yeah, so you can follow us at Blabber the Hut on all our social media platforms. Our latest episode is generating a lot of interest. We were attending at Dublin Comic Con where we ran Blabber Live, but also we were lucky enough to interview author Mike Chen, who is writing the new Star Wars Brotherhood book, which features Obi-Wan, Anakin, and also Asajj Ventress, and it is set in the Clone Wars era. And there have been people getting their advanced copies. We can't say too much, but I think people are going to be very, very pleased by it. If you are a Clone Wars fan, you are not gonna wanna miss this. But yeah, Blabber the Hut at Blabber the Hut on all social media platforms. We're on Spotify, we're on Anchor, we're on all of your usual podcast apps. If you want to follow along with us, you can follow myself. I am at Plocool on social media. That's at PLO _KOOL. Just don't follow me on that on Instagram yet. I was hacked. I haven't got my Instagram yet, but on Twitter, it's at Plocool. You can follow me
Wait,
there.
you
And
don't have my
again,
Cash App account?
oh no, I don't, unfortunately. Yeah, people are only discovering that I'm not into Bitcoin. But yeah, so and like I said to anyone here, my DMs are open. So if you have any questions about the conventions or traveling abroad for cons or anything of the sort, please feel free to message me. My DMs are always open. You can find me. Obviously, I've been tagged in the post here at Gary Matthews, so you're more than welcome to pop me a message, add me if I can help in any way. I'm more than happy to do that.
Well, once again, first off, thank you very much, Gary, for coming on with us for this Intergalactic News Desk. For those who missed this, it will be on replay, obviously, on our Facebook page. And later this evening, if you go to youtube.com/the Virtual Cantina Network, it will be able to be on demand. Ooh, very nice. It'll be on demand on the VCN later on this evening. And speaking of the VCN later on tonight, we will be live with another episode of The Path of the Dark Saber. We're knee deep right now in the live action lore of the Dark Saber, which we're going to be watching 2 of season 2 episodes of The Mandalorian tonight, starting at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time, and that's 6:30 Pacific. We'll be joined my friend, our mods Jeff and Dave will be joining me along with MVO, as well as tonight during the after the second episode, we're going to have a very, very special event for a future show on the VCN. So it's going to be very, very excited. Jeff, my Grogu and Pram is actually up on my shelf right now, so it's not really behind me anymore, but I'll show Gary at a later date. But anything you want to close out tonight, Gary?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on, and to anybody who took the time to stop by and listen to our little chat. Thank you so much for coming. It's always a pleasure to talk to like-minded folks, and obviously to catch up with my brother in the Force, Spencer. So the one thing I will say is, as I suppose I am from Ireland, and Ireland now is forever ingrained in the history of Star Wars, I will simply sign off in Irish. So all I will say is Gura Mila Malgut, August Gamid on Force a Lat.
And may the Force be with you. We'll see you later.
May the Force be with you, buddy.